it on, boys. Good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of High Top Sports. Happy to have you here. Happy Monday to all of you. It feels good, like I said yesterday, to be back in the saddle, to be rocking and rolling. And as everybody knows, we had ourselves a monster weekend these past couple of weekends while I was gone in recruiting. And I wanted to make sure that we could gather what happened where we are in the middle of recruiting season. It is time to get your feet wet, dive into this, figure out what's going on. Hopefully we start to see some things happen. I was talking to Cam off behind the scenes a little bit. We kind of have a little bit of a date or a little bit, and I was kind of leaning towards it yesterday of when we could start seeing some of these recruits come through. So just so you guys also know, this show is brought to you by BetterHelp. We'll talk about that later on in the show. Before we do that, though, let's go ahead and bring our man on, Mr. Cam Mulletless Parker. What's going on, big dog? How are you?
Yeah, I'm sorry to disappoint everyone with the lack of flow. It was getting too hot in Gainesville, and it was time. But we're like 2.5, almost 3 weeks in. It's growing back out nicely, but yeah, it was way too hot. But I'm glad that we can still be friends, Sheldon. I appreciate that, even though I expected you a little bit with the shocking decision.
Look, we love you here. And Mama Parker, I think she had some influence, so we're more upset with her. Although Mama Parker, we're always going to love
Yeah,
her, but I think she pressed it too much, and you're like, you got to listen to Mama. So I respect it. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. And it looks good, though. It looks good. So you're rocking and rolling, big guy.
I
No
appreciate.
worries. No worries there. I mean, let's just dive right into it. Like we were just talking about. And I do want to get your thoughts and opinions on this. Maybe I'm off the mark when I say this, but I feel like the quality of recruits that visited over the past 3 weeks now, is what it's come to, seems to be at a higher tier than it was last year. So when I say that in my head, how I vision this, right? Let's say there's 25, 30. Let's say Florida lands 8 of them. Those 8 compared to the 8 last year that came from that group on paper will be higher because the overall group has elevated. That's my thought and perception of these past 3 weekends. Am I on the right track there, or am I reaching? Am I grabbing for straws?
I'm still pretty new to the recruiting game. I did it a little bit the previous years, but this is the first time I'm getting to really jump into it a little bit and go to some of these go to some of the visits and get to meet with some of the recruits and just kind of be a fly on the wall as I'm figuring this out. But
Sure.
once from the time that at least from I've seen, and even with Billy Napier, just in general, from what people have heard and whatnot, is you're right. These are higher level recruits. It was pretty much night and day between from the Mullen era to this era with Billy Napier, and I think everyone kind of expected that because he was hired to be a big time recruiter, and you expected that as the class has gone on that they would get better. So it shouldn't be a surprise necessarily that higher level recruits are coming to Gainesville for visits, especially in the summer like this. So I think you're kind of right on the money there, at least from what I've seen in the little time and the time I've spent learning kind of how to do this a little bit, because recruiting
Sure.
is a whole nother battle in itself. Commitments don't always mean commitments. Recruitment shutdowns don't always mean recruitment shutdowns. And now with everything going on in the state of college football, it's just different. It's a whole different battle. But yeah, from what I've seen, I mean, overall, they just seem like that they are getting higher level recruits, at least on campus. Dan Mullen, I don't think he had that issue with getting recruits on campus just because he relied so much on the Florida brand and him as an offensive mind. But of course, finishing with the classes and actually getting guys on campus that you signed was the issue. Napier, you don't see that as much. They are getting higher level recruits. But yeah, I think that overall that's on the right track.
Good stuff, man. So let's talk. We got 3 guys that you wanted to go over today. You had a great article with Balhit Stubbs that you wrote yesterday, I believe. We also had the big offensive lineman slash basketball player, 6'9". We want to talk about him. But let's start with Vernell Brown. Obviously, a lot of eyeballs are on him, on where he could end up going. Ohio State making a big, heavy push, of course, always someone to keep an eye on. But Florida, from what I've been hearing and reading, has made some major headway over these past few weeks. And he's looking to make an announcement in July, which we were talking offline that you feel there's going to be some big movement happening in July. And I mentioned this yesterday where last year we had a lot of movement happen around this week, but it seems like things could maybe move a month or two. Is that what you're hearing as well?
Yeah, with Vernell Brown, it always seemed like Ohio State was a bit of the leader, and then going into the Florida visit, Florida made a jump beforehand, and the visit kind of solidified that. And again, this is a kid that's been around this campus for almost as long as he's been alive. His grandfather played at Florida, his dad played at Florida. His dad was he was a staffer at Florida, and then he went to go work with the agency and Anthony Richardson. But Vernell Brown, the third, Trey Brown, I mean, he's been to Florida probably more than some of the guys in the 2024 class. He's just been around that program so much, and that family pride does play a big role in a legacy recruit's recruitment. Obviously, I mean, it makes sense. And Florida made a big jump this weekend because of those relationships and the familiarity. He said it didn't really feel like a visit because he's been there before.
Sure.
He just finally got to kind of as a recruit. He's known Billy Gonzalez for most of his life. And instead of having a guy that, was there at the tail end of your dad's career that you kind of knew just from those connections, now Billy Gonzalez is getting to recruit him and he gets to see, what goes into an official visit. He talked about the presentation that Billy Gonzalez laid out for him and his role, should he commit to Florida and enroll at Florida, kind of being a Percy Harvin, Eugene Wilson, Kadarius Toney type. Those are the three guys that he mentioned to us, at least. So not really like it's a big deal, obviously, to get a guy like that on campus and to get a legacy recruit like that on campus. But Florida has stayed strong in this recruitment, and he was very firm on the fact that he is committing in the month of July. Now, he didn't give us a specific date, but he was very firm on the fact that he is committing in July. Uh, Florida is in the running for him. And I know he's got one more visit left, I believe, to FSU, if I'm not mistaken. So, again, he's kind of, they're going to take these last visits. And this isn't just speaking for him, but a bunch of recruits. They've all got final visits this week. And then when they go into July, you'll start to see some movement with commitments. But, Florida's in a good spot with him right now. And this is also a kid that he's not going to give much intel with leaders or anything like that. He's got his top four. He's going with that. When July comes around, the Gators have a good chance, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, he seems to be handling himself very professionally, just given the circumstance of his dad and being involved with this. He's not a rookie to this, and not to say other recruits are rookies. It's just lack of experience, but he's been around the game for quite some time. And when you'll notice a lot of these recruits that their dad was either a player or had a lot of connections to the game, the way they operate their recruiting is much different than someone who doesn't have it. And it's not, again, nothing wrong with either way, but they're very much close pocket, and you can't really ever get a true pulse of what's happening, which I enjoy. Those are always my most exciting ones because you really don't know where they're going to go the day they commit, and it makes it exciting. But it is great to hear. You're just trying to kind of read the tea leaves. How is his visit going? What is the connection? How's the conversation? It feels like home. In Florida, it feels like it should be ultimately the lock, but there was an early on crystal ball back in January, I believe, to Ohio State, which had Florida fans in a frenzy. That, I believe, seems to have died down a little bit. I want to say that came from Wilt Fong on 3. I could be wrong, but I feel like that was so. Maybe those. Go ahead.
He did through 24/7 Sports, if I'm not mistaken. And then On 3 came out and said that Wilt Fong came out and said that he was pretty confident that Florida was in the lead going into the visit. Which again, that just kind of speaks to the recruiting game, that it's ever changing. Nothing's ever gonna, stay the same. Just because a kid comes off of a visit and says Team A is his leader, well, if he can go visit Team B next week, and all of a sudden Team B is his leader. So, you never know. But again, going back to, like you said, he's not a rookie when it comes to recruiting. His dad, being a Florida player and going through the process while also being in an off-field staff role, now also kind of being an agent and helping out Anthony Richardson and through all that, he's very familiar with the other side of the game that we don't get to see on the field. He's familiar with the business side of it. He's familiar with the recruiting game and taking it seriously and not, really rushing through it and truly weighing out all of your options. And I think that that's a very respectable trait to have. And I know that that's something too, where, we talk about Billy Napier and how he recruits that. That's something that they respect too, that, it's not just a guy who's rushing into something or a guy who's going to, flip one week and then come back and then, kind of bounce back and forth. But a guy who, when he commits, he's going to stay strong and stay committed and be a good member of the program. Now, Florida does have, decommits, obviously that happens, but Vernell Brown is one of the ones who it feels like that once he commits, that's probably going to be the school that he signs with.
For sure. Get that Miles Graham vibe, right? Where it's like, look, the decision's the decision. This is what it is. Let's talk a little bit about Hilton Stubbs. You recently wrote an article about him. He obviously, just kind of reminder, he committed to USC a few weeks back. During that span of USC commits, it didn't feel real when it happened. Doesn't feel real now. And I still don't think it's going to happen. I think this young man ends up somewhere close to the state of Florida. Whether that is Florida is still up for grabs. But this is somebody that I know Seatbelt mentioned on our show that he would love to play alongside Hilton Stubbs. So this is a big possibility that he could be coming. And again, let's talk a little bit more about your article and how you feel about it.
Yeah, that was definitely weird with the USC commitment, especially because he was crystal ball to Florida. It did seem like Florida was the leader up until that commitment, and then he kind of blindsides everyone with the USC commitment. But I think this is one of the cases where just because a guy is committed somewhere doesn't mean that this is the final spot. He was still very high on Florida when he committed, and this really shot them up. This visit really helped their chances with him. Like I said, Florida's the two spot right now behind USC, obviously being a commitment. The team he's committed to is going to be number one, but Florida's done a really good job of staying in it and keep pushing. And this is something where it's going to go until the fall. It's not going to be anything where he signs. Oh, sorry to interrupt, but there's my cat. Chest. He's making an appearance. I know I didn't get him on the show last time I was on. Folder was a little upset, but it is what it is.
I love it.
But uh, this is a recruitment that's going to carry into the fall, and he was asked about what would the wins and losses and success for Florida mean. And a big thing with Stubbs and a few of the other guys is it's not necessarily about the wins and losses this year, but it's about the improvement, especially on their defensive side. And I think that obviously is going to be a factor going forward. I mean, they've got 3 new position coaches. They're coming off of 3 straight losing seasons, 2 under the current staff. The defense did not look good last year. So, of course, they're going to want to see improvement, especially with new position coaches. But considering all of that, Florida's in a great spot for him right now, considering he's committed to a different team. It's just a matter of sticking with it. And now I think Miami's involved now, too. He's going to visit for the Florida-Miami game. So, it's they just got to keep chugging along, keep fighting, and their defense makes some strong headways this year and improves a lot. Could see Stubbs being a Florida Gator, but of course, he's got the commitment to USC. He does like USC, obviously. So, they just got to stay in it right now, but they've got to show some improvement on the field on the defensive side to get this guy. And again, you're talking about this is a class-changing type of player. This is when you look at like Miles Graham and Aaron Childs last year, getting those 2 guys to commit to Florida and then stay committed completely changed the 2024 class. If they're able to flip Hilton Stubbs from USC, it's the same thing where this is a guy that completely changes the class, and he could be a day one player for Florida. They're really high on him. He really likes the defensive staff that they put together. It's just a matter of they have to show that improvement on the field and then keep chugging along to try to get him to flip from USC.
It seems like the staff made a lot of headway, including Will Harris, obviously getting the commitment for Seatbelt this past weekend as well. But I think, like you just mentioned, I think they like what's been put together on paper, how it looks, how it sounds. But there's that reserve of what is it going to look like on the football field. And I think he even said, look, it's not about wins and losses, it's about progress. And I think that's something we've been beating the drum as well as fans. It's like, look, it's not even the fact that we're losing, it's how we're losing. We just don't feel like we're making any headway. And like last year, those losses, if they, not the fact that, again, that they happen, it's how they happen. And I think that's where a lot of recruits are looking at, is we don't feel like the needle's being moved. So, look, I agree with it, and I respect that. I think that's a fair analysis of like, look, I like you guys a lot. I don't want to say yes until I see that you've changed. Just like a relationship. Like, I think, look, I love you. I think it's perfect, but I need to see something from you. I need action. Talking in romantic terms.
Stubbs straight up said, like, it isn't necessarily about wins and losses. I have the quote right here. He said, I want to see defensive aggression. I want to see what Coach Armstrong's got up under his sleeve. I don't think it's a win or lose type thing. I think it's just progression, seeing that they're coming back to what Florida is. And again, the bread and butter of the great Florida teams in history has been their defense. Yes, Spurrier had, the fun and gun, and there was Tebow, but that 2008 national championship team defense was phenomenal. The 2006 defense arguably is what the reason why they won. Even the 96 team was a big reason why that they were so good with a lot of the legends that they had over there. And that's what these recruits want to see, is that the defense is getting back to that high level. And you even go back to even the Muschamp era and the good part of the McElwain era, why they had the couple good years that they did was their defense was one of the best defenses in the country. Just the offense couldn't keep up. But that's something that that the recruits now want to see, especially because Florida's defense has just been so terrible the last 3 or 4 years. So again, the if people talk about the schedule is what it is. Florida's probably not going to go 12-0.
Hey,
You
hey,
know,
hey,
it's
Cam. Hey, look, I let the
sorry,
haircut slide.
sorry,
I let the
sorry,
haircut slide.
sorry.
Let's not.
Listen, I it's too much by Zach Goodall. I'm sorry. Okay,
Yeah,
sorry,
that's fair. Yeah,
but
Zach was on the pessimistic side for sure. We miss Zach.
yeah, it's but I think a lot of the recruits see that and they go, maybe it isn't necessarily about wins or losses. It's about the development and actual change, not just saying that you're going to change, but showing it on the field.
Sure.
And that's going to be Hilton subs, and especially with the defense, because it's kind of a make or break year for the defense, just with how bad they've been the last couple of years. No, Gator fans are itching to finally have a good, consistent defense that does the basic things. They've got good staff members in place. They've got a good scheme. Just about putting it all together, and all the cards will fall where they're supposed to.
Absolutely. And let's talk about this young man, Jazair Jackson. I say that correctly?
Yeah,
6'9", like 300 pounds. There's no film on him because he's a basketball star to boot. He's
yeah.
visited Florida this past weekend, at Florida State today, then Mississippi State, and then Georgia. What's going? Florida's leading the way too. I mean, look. I mean, that was his first visit, so I would hope so. But let's talk to us about Jackson. Jazar Jackson.
Well, you're talking about the former teammate of Bronny James. That's
Okay.
a fun little flex there. But he was a 3-star basketball recruit from IMG. Rather than go to school, he went through the overtime elite route. Again, I'm not too familiar with the ins and outs of basketball, but I know it's kind of semi-pro, I guess, if you were to describe it that way.
Okay.
He actually declared NBA draft this year, but now he's looking at football. Obviously, he's got good footwork. I mean, he can play basketball. He's got the size for it, but this is a project type of prospect for Florida. He definitely meets the size needs. I mean, they love the big offensive linemen. They love the taller ones. He fits that. They have some needs at tackle. He fits that. But this is definitely a project prospect. And that's something, too, that Billy Napier and Rob Sale haven't been afraid of. Cam Waits was a basketball prospect. They brought him over to Louisiana, and then they let him come with them to Florida. They have 2 offensive linemen, freshmen, that are from Europe. So, I mean,
Sure.
they're not afraid of taking big swings at offensive linemen that they truly feel can help the program. The biggest thing with this is he is, I guess, planning to enroll as a 2024 guy. So this isn't a 2025 recruit. It's a summer spot. I don't know exactly how that's going to work because I think that they're at the scholarship limit now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's a Bonnie McLean situation with a walk on for 1 year scholarship next year type of situation. But I know that he is planning to enroll whatever school he chooses. Within the next 2 weeks or so, his recruitment or his commitment is going to be one of the first.
Interesting.
He's taking a lot of his visits, this week and next, trying to
Yeah.
just get it out, commit to a school, and then enroll for the end of the summer. So, again, a 2024 guy. But this is big because Florida has no offensive line recruits for its 2025 class right now. Enoch Wangoy moved over to the 2024 class, so they have nobody. So if they can continue to beef up the 2024 class a little bit, the Jason Zandamelas, the Jazair Jacksons,
For
that
sure.
helps a little bit with next year
Yeah.
because they've already missed out on a couple guys. So, and I know that they're working on Solomon Thomas, trying to get him to flip, but that's always not a guarantee either. Flips just don't always happen. So, maybe if they can get a guy in the 2024 class, spend this year developing him, he'll be ready to go by 2025 when you don't have all the recruits there for that position group. But
Yeah.
it's
Look,
interesting. Not many 6'9", 6'10", 6'11"
just
guys
lying
who
around.
played basketball with Bronny James show up on your campus and say, But and coach, no, it's an improvement, man. And it's one of the ones where God willing, College Game Day goes to Gainesville next year. Uh, they'll have like a quick 5 minute story on this kid because it's such a weird story, but it's such a fun story too. But again, Florida's in the lead. Kind of going back to the Florida side of it, Florida's in the lead. They were in the lead before the visit. He said that they had a solid lead after the visit. Um, so it's Florida's recruit to kind of lose right now. Um, but again, you never know because he hasn't taken the visits to the other schools yet. He was at FSU, so we'll see. But as of right now, not to pull the Jenks card, but Florida is in the lead for this guy. And considering how the offensive line recruiting looks for next season, next year's class, this one just becomes a little bit more important.
Great. Like I didn't. I said, look, I've been behind the eight ball. I kind of saw these things pop up over the last week, but I didn't realize he was a 24 guy. So interesting information there. Hopefully, some people kind of got was able to learn on that. Great stuff. And look, I don't mind the project. And like you just said, I think with all the talent from the 2024 class, the young big offensive lineman that we just kind of got here as of late, kind of plugs right into that. And a class that is, the line has some depth going into this year. That's something we've been hearing from Billy. Feels like we're extending that going into next year. And hopefully we can get rolling on this 2024 or 2025 offensive line class as well. Before I let you go, Cam, right now Florida sits at 70th or 69th, I believe, in recruiting for 2025. Got some people scratching their heads. How are you feeling? Billy makes a strong close here, or is there reason to be concerned?
I think a little bit of both. Part of that is you see other teams getting commitments, Florida not necessarily. But again, July is a big month for them because they've got a bunch of recruits committing. Jazir Jackson, like I mentioned, he's committing in the next 2 weeks or so. Vernell Brown is anytime in July. We'll see. He may drop a top two. That was something that he kind of, gave an Easter egg about. Like if he were to condense his uh, recruiting, it would be a top two, but we'll have to see about that. Tavian Wallace, the 4-star linebacker, John Mills, 3-star offensive lineman, they're committing on July 2nd. I know Micah DeBose had a tentative date of July 4th, and then you've got Tayshawn Gelsey and Antoine Hill are committing. It looks like July 13th, and then Lagonza Hayward at the end of the month. So you've got a lot of guys who are committing this month or next month
That
in
are
July. You've
Gator
got
leads.
Gator Links who have visited the last 3 weeks. You've got a few more as well who have said the end of July before my high school season. That's a 4-star Christian Gass at linebacker, 4-star receiver Joshua Moore, Solomon Thomas, a 5-star FSU commit, said that he wants to have his recruitment shut down before his season starts. It's kind of funny. He talked about like when he was asked about that, he was kind of just like, I'm ready for this to be over. I'm so tired of dealing with this. I want to pick my school and be done with it. So he'll be at the end of July before the football season starts. Receiver Nashawn Montgomery, who has been projected to choose Florida, will choose sometime in July. 3-star tight end Micah Jones, 4-star linebacker Ben Hanks, who's the son of a former Gator, and then 4-star edge Cedric Works, who was on campus this past week. So all of those guys have said either a solid commitment date in July or said that they want to try to choose a school by the end of July, maybe into August. So again, with this week or this month, you got to see the visits. This upcoming month, you're going to see a lot of the commitments. There's a few guys who I definitely think Florida should feel strongly about. Like I said, Nashawn Montgomery's already been crystal ball to go to Florida. I know that they made some strong headways with Ben Hanks and Joshua Moore, Lagonza Hayward, Tavian Wallace. They made all big jumps with them. So maybe they can get those guys to commit. But at the end of the day, too, just because a guy commits does not mean that his commitment is over. It's we've seen guys for Florida who have said that their recruitment is shut down. They go and flip to another school right before signing day. So it's never over until it's over, and
Sure.
even once it's over, there's still the transfer portal. So you never know.
Yeah.
Like it's at the end of the day, you never truly know. But you want to have commits going into the football season because those guys can also recruit guys that you're still targeting. It gives you a good baseline for when the season ends and you go into the transfer portal. Um, so yeah, it's going back to it. I definitely think that there was some concern at least from an outside point of view, about not having as great of a class right now. But it's also July. There's an entire season to be played. There's 7 games that they can have recruits at. Like there's plenty of time, to make up for it. All there's going to be a bunch of commits this next month. So again, it's too early to say that this class is going to be really bad or this class is going to be really good. See how July goes. There's a few guys that Florida should feel really confident about. And then there's a few more guys who into the season that Florida should feel confident about. I know the last time I was on, we talked about Jarquez Carter and CJ Ingram. Now that CJ Ingram has the basketball offer, that is something that Florida should feel really confident about.
Sure.
And Jarquez Carter as well, even though he still visits, they should feel pretty confident about him as well. And those are 2 recruitments that I at least personally think are going to go into the fall. Who knows? Something could change. But again, there's plenty of time to make up for it. It's not hit the panic button yet, but it's definitely kind of
Keep your eyes open.
it's not the best thing in the world to not have commits.
For
Yeah.
sure. Well, Cam, I always appreciate you coming on here, man, and giving us your insights. It's always a blast and a pleasure, and watching you become more involved with this, man. So I really do appreciate you. Tell them when they give you a follow on Twitter so they can keep up. We'll be sure to have you back on for the season. And maybe it's not Jubilee June this year; it's Jubilee July. And maybe I might have to find a new name for July because I can't share the name with Jubilee June. Maybe I can. We'll figure it out. But tell me they can find me, and I appreciate you.
Yeah, you can find me on I guess it's X now. I still call it Twitter. At Cam Parker 25. All my work for Florida Gator stuff is on Gators Illustrated. So previously, all Gators through Fan Nation. We are now Gators Illustrated, so you can find all of my work there. We finally put together a good writing crew. Bennett Solomon has been at the College World Series. He's a UF grad, so he's been putting in work there. And how about the Gators today, man? That's a fun game to watch, man. They look
Big win.
right to the very end. What a win! But he's been doing good. Kyle Landers, another UF grad, who's been helping me out with recruiting a little bit, dipping into baseball, dipping into basketball, kind of being a jack of all trades. So we've got a good crew that we're putting together. Again, we're kind of rebranding and starting from the ground up, but very excited for what we have going on at the site and for get to still cover the Gators, man. There's nothing like the Florida Gators beat. I'll tell you that much.
I love it, man. I love it. I was watching the Olympic trials, and I was watching one of our Gator girls get it done, as long as one of our Gator guys as well, winning the 800-meter swim. I can't think of his name at the moment, but good stuff all around, man. I appreciate you as always, Cam. Don't go anywhere, boys. We still have a little bit of the show left, but Cam, you be good, man. Good night. Keep the flow flowing, baby. We'll see you.
Awesome. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Tristan Carrillo says 22 celebrates 22 months of membership. Sounds like the deck is getting hot, like you said. Yes, sir. Mr. Dave Waters obviously going on vacation, and that deck is starting to warm up where some commits could be rolling in. Now, I've got a little article here that we're going to go over here in just a moment once we give a little love to our sponsors here about Ty Jackson, the number 1 linebacker. Very interesting little quote here. And this is a Wilt Fong little prediction, which is always fun. Little Fong bomb there for the boys. But boys and girls, we are sponsored. High Top is sponsored today by a Better Help. This year has gone by so quickly. What is something you want to show yourself for, what you can be proud of, something you accomplished? When life's going fast, it's time to take a moment to celebrate your wins and make some adjustments for the rest of your year. Look, BetterHelp, just so you guys are unaware of what it is, and the reason why I'm passionate about this is I'm very passionate about men's mental health and mental awareness. And sometimes you need someone to talk to, you need some therapy, you need somebody to kind of express how you're feeling. And as dudes, we're hard-headed, and sometimes we don't like to talk about it. What's great about BetterHelp is it's all online. You don't have to worry about going somewhere. I know that sometimes it's inconvenient to do those things. So when they kind of reached out to have this sponsorship, I said, absolutely, love this. I think it's great to be able to have someone to talk to, see how you're feeling, get it off your chest. Again, as dudes, most of the time we want to rock and roll. And I know we got some female audiences that like to watch as well. So love that we're able to team up with them and work with them. I have not used BetterHelp myself, but I have people that I go lean to and I talk to be able to work through my battles. So I understand it and definitely appreciate what they're doing. So take a moment, visit BetterHelp.com/hightop today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/hightop to get 10%. I appreciate it, boys. Thank you, BetterHelp, for that. Now, let's dive into Mr. Ty Jackson, the number 1 linebacker in the country, 4-star recruit right now. And I kind of mentioned this the other day when we were speaking about the change to the NCAA getting their hands back into the pot, where they're starting to basically allocate a budget for the players. Their schools are going to be paying these players. And we talked about the change in the NIL, and I spoke with our connection to the NIL, to the collective. There is some changes happening given these new rules, just like we said there would be. So no surprise there. And I started to say, I said, look, with that change, the impact of recruiting and how important recruiting starts to ramp back up again, because once it's now it just becomes a playing field of, okay, well, this is what you're worth. It's just where your NIL evaluation is. There's no arguing. There's no under the bag stuff. So it goes back to, again, the basics. And something here that the Jackson family noted, and we've talked about it before, and I think it's a fantastic program, but I think it got kind of brushed under the radar with the NIL movement. And it's basically just was like, how much are you going to pay me? So these things that were good programs that were instilled went away. But the Jackson family said, look, the Gator Made program really caught the Jackson family eye. Director of Player Relations, Savannah Bailey, impressed with her promotion of what it can do for their players. They did their presentation, which stood out amongst all others. Samaj said, I think that's Ty Jackson's father, adding it showed recruits like Ty what it would be like to balance a budget as a first-round draft pick. And again, that's where, if this is all, ultimately has always been the goal is how do we get you to the next level, and how do we get you to manage that budget? And that conversation has always been important. I remember watching a few years ago, you watch these NFL shows, like they usually have a class. They'll bring these first recruits in and try to help them manage their budget. What's funny is when I interviewed the Pouncey brothers, that was something we spoke about. They were like, look, we were very thankful that our investors or our money financial advisors told us to get into these things. And they got into their liquor company, and they also got into real estate. And it's like, look, without them, we wouldn't be where we're at. We wouldn't be able to live the life that we live without these things. And a lot of you don't have that education, and so they get a lump sum money, and we think, like, how do you go broke? Well, you get thrown all this money and start to live that way and realize it's not forever. So I think these things are going to add up in the long run when kids start to realize, like, this is a huge impact. So it was cool to see, again, someone like a top-tier recruit show, like, look, this is actually really important to me because I know this is where things are going to be headed, and these kids are going to get, again, they're making money, and they have the ability to make money in college that could set them up for the rest of their life if distributed properly. So it's crazy to think now, like, everything kind of shifted up one, right? Where before it was always about making it to the league, which is still the big play. But now you're able to if you manage it right and do things the right way, get some big deals and sign some big contracts and invest it properly and move it around properly. And I believe that that's what Billy and Gator Made and those guys are trying to build. So that was cool stuff there. Rock and roll. Joking B just became a member. Joking B, welcome to the family. Also, I see Daniel Riviera's been talking a lot of shit in the chat. Daniel, if you don't mind, can you drop down the game time for the Georgia Bulldogs in the College World Series so we can all get together and watch that, whatever that is this week? Just put the date and time, and so we can all go and watch that together. That'd be fantastic. I would really appreciate that if you could do that for us, man. Thank you. Let's see. Just gave Cam a follow on Twitter. I love that. Just say Xmas in July. I mean, I could, Terrence. I could, but I feel like that's overplayed. It's overplayed. I think we're better than that here. You know what I mean? Ty Jackson canceled his FSU visit. I like that. I know Georgia was leading the way at one point, I believe. So we will see. I love it. Did I do something joking, B? Oh, you guys are laughing at my joke about Daniel. Okay, I thought joking B was the joke. I see you guys laughing in the chat. I was like, did someone get me? Muddy says oppression is freaking real. Pick up the phone and call someone. No shame. And absolutely, Muddy. And look, that's why I teamed up. That's why I love it when our guy reached out and said, hey, you want to reach out with better help? I said, absolutely, man. There's it's sometimes, you want to kind of be the big bad wolf and not have to handle it. And I'm not afraid to come on here and say, look, sometimes you need somebody to talk to. And I think it's a great program what they're doing. So I don't mind supporting it and having them support us. So I appreciate it. Justin says, go Gators baseball. I love it. Well, look at this. Looks like our Georgia friend has left. Yeah, I mean, typical. They can't handle the smoke. I sit here and take all the punches and all the jabs, keep rolling. I ask one simple question, all of a sudden I'm the bad guy. You know what I mean? It's unbelievable. But boys, great Monday. A huge shout out to Cam for hopping on and hanging out with us as well. Mr. Nobody says Shelton's mom is the only reason I'm here. Okay. Look, boys and girls, appreciate you as always for tuning in on this wonderful Monday afternoon. Don't forget, we missed a week. So Wednesday's going to be the best damn day of the week. It's going to be turned up like nobody's been. I was thinking today, shower thought, I was in the shower. They had the greatest show on turf. The women's softball World Series was on. They had their big sign, the greatest show on dirt, right? I'm thinking like Wednesday's like the greatest show on Wednesday. You know what I mean? Like we get like a big sign, right? Like how they had it there. I was just thinking about that. That was pretty fun. Anywho, the best show on earth, on dirt, on the turf is happening Wednesday, boys and girls. Live at 8:35 with Mr. Keith Nabier and David Swolderquist. It's going to be a jam-packed. Keith's going to give us some more intel and insight on recruiting. That man was working his tail off. He also spoke to a lot of recruits. There were so many guys there this past week, so we're going to get some more intel on more players. Again, I see in the comments, it doesn't matter till they sign. Shut up. We're talking about it. It's recruiting season. Get over it. I love you. I'll see you in the next one, boys and girls. Be good. Peace and love, baby.